Alright guys, welcome to another RuneScape news coverage video following the stream of the mining smithing rework. I hope you've enjoyed all the videos so far, but now we're going to talk about miscellaneous stuff that you may want to know about before this launches or before even the beta launches. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. Let's go! Alright guys, so first up, you probably have noticed, or you probably have heard that with this update, they're going to be removing ores, bars, and smith gear from drop tables and replace those with equivalent value. The key is they want to preserve the value of PVM drop tables. There is an unfortunate side effect though, that this means that the spring cleaner will not be very useful for mining and smithing anymore, which is the primary reason it's used for, since it won't have anything dropped on the ground to dismantle into ores. It still will work as intended for other things like battle staves, etc., but its primary use that most people use it for will not be useful whatsoever, so it's taking a huge hit, the spring cleaner that is, unfortunately. They may end up doing some kind of workaround to still make it very useful and sought after, but right now it's gonna take a massive hit. That's just the general nature of how they're cleaning up these drop tables. And the reason why they're doing this is because they want mining and smithing to be the source of all mining and smithing materials, not PVM, which makes sense, and a lot of people do want that, so that is an unfortunate side effect of that process. Metallic dragons are also going to need to be fixed, because obviously they drop bars every time they're killed, and there's also a scope for higher tier dragons, but it's not going to be part of this rework, so you really don't got to worry too much about that. Anyways, moving on. The impact it's going to have on Iron Man. That's actually a very complicated question, because every time they change something about RuneScape, it almost always has some kind of distorted effect on Iron Man unintentionally. So they're saying if it needs to be, like if the situation arises, they may change some mechanics to work slightly different for Iron Man. Again, that's, if it arises and they need to make that kind of adjustment. They don't want to change any of the design just to suit Iron Man though, so keep that in mind. It's also important to note that none of the base mining and smithing mechanics will require any quest unlocks or another skill to train from 1 to 99. So you should be able to efficiently and actively participate in everything on offer without having, quest requirements or other skill requirements. Alright, so moving on to what I talked about briefly, betas. They actually wanted to do a beta this month in December, but it just wasn't possible. I guess time constraints or whatever may have you. Maybe it wasn't fully prepared to be tested by the players. Don't know, but it was supposed to come this month. It didn't happen. But it will be early next year, so maybe January, February-ish, and they want to get it out as soon as possible. They also want to make it as open as possible, bar any technical limitations, so as much people as they can get into the beta, the better, and they're going to strive for that. It's likely that they're going to make it just the test square that you've seen on the live stream, or you've seen in the background right now. It's not going to be the full open world, which makes sense. They just want people testing the mining smithing. They don't want them just playing on the beta worlds willy-nilly. They want them on and actively working on what the beta is there for. Moving on, Voice of Saren, specifically the Traherne Hour, in Elf City. That needs to be looked at because harmonized rocks, if you don't know, the way it works is when a rock is harmonized, it's gonna produce ore. You can keep mining it, it will not deplete. It keeps producing ore. So that's essentially going to be useless post rework because that's going to be how any ore works. So they're going to have to find a way to make Traherne Hour benefit the players. It may not be as powerful as Traherne Hour is now, and they're not necessarily trying to make it that way, just so long as it's something players enjoy and feel it is a good benefit. It doesn't have to be super overpowered, it just has to be, useful. In terms of XP, or the XP rates in general with mining and smithing, they're going to balance it roughly to be about the same as it is in the current game right now. That's kind of impossible, but they're going to try to get it as close as possible, and if they can't get it exact, it's going to be better with the mining and smithing rework. It'll definitely not be worse, because then it leaves the community feeling like, well, they shouldn't have even done this in the first place. So it's definitely going to be on par or better, so keep that in mind. In terms of dungeoneering, dungeoneering basically runs on its own code, so it's largely going to remain the same. In fact, the tiers, the ores, the bars, etc., and the levels to equip are actually already nicely laid out and do fit accordingly to the level scaling, so they really don't need to, in my opinion, even touch it. It works fine within its own confines within Demonheim, so they're pretty much gonna leave it as is, as probably most of you would have expected. In terms of quest requirements that require like mining and smithing skills, those are going to be largely unchanged unless you have to mine or smith certain materials that, you know, obviously they've changed those levels with the mining smithing rework. In those cases, yes, the mining and smithing requirements for those skills will change, but by and large, they won't. So important that they're not looking to add any new divine locations. So, you know, the ones with that Addy or Rune. I don't know how much people actually mine the divine locations. Most people do other things like the Simulacrum, the Box Trap, the U Tree. So I guess by and large, those are going to pretty much be useless because they only reach up to Rune. And since Rune is going to be really hardly worth much at all, it's not going to be that, you know, useful in terms of the divine locations. They did say that if any of the JMods want to take on that as a little project in the future, they can. So we may see that they add, you know, the higher tier ores as divine locations, but definitely not with the rework. So make sure you note that. Anyways, moving on, I want to talk about the ores and where you can find them. So all the new ores are going to be wherever they can find spots for them, basically. Some of them already have like thematic appropriate locations that they're going to be, you know, plopping there, and some will need changes to their locations to make them more thematically apt. This may mean that they're going to be repurposing existing mining spots, and it may mean that they're also going to be creating several new mining spots. They said, for example, the Living Rock Cavern and the Lava Flow Mine, those are two locations that they do want to be popular and used as iconic mining spots. So they're probably going to repurpose those slightly, add those existing ores, and hopefully those are like, you know, kind of social hubs for mining. Next thing I want to talk about is the smithing items you're going to be making. Probably people aren't going to like this. I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but tier 90, the ores and bars that you're going to be smithing and using, they're currently balanced at tier 75 or tier 80 in terms of stats. So they're not going to be tier 90 stats. But they do have the upgraded system of the +5, so they'll go up to 5 tiers, either 80 or 85. So that'll be the maximum you can create your own armor. They understand that it's really uncomfortable to have a level 90 smithing requirement that only creates 75 or 80 armor, but still requires 90 to wield or wear. It's a very weird situation, but it's unfortunately the best solution they have come up with without having to threaten PVM too much. So take with that what you will. Also, smithing perks need to be looked at, the ones you get from Invention. It's unlikely that they're going to add new perks, but they may if they need to, and they may have to redesign or tweak existing ones. But the rework does allow for much more type of rewards, because currently the only thing they can really give you is like less ingredients used or faster smithing, but they can be able to play around with different things like less heat decay, etc. with the rework, so they may be more in the way of Invention for that. In terms of high alks, they don't want people to high alk with this. That's not the expected or intended route that they expect, or route that they want players to take with this. Alk values will be going down, and a lot less items are going to be coming into the game. That being said, they're looking to substitute items in players' banks with new functionless items that can be alked for the same value to preserve the value of players' banks. It's actually important to note because if you're hoarding any large amounts of like rune armor, etc., if you're planning on ever selling those or alking them, you may or may not want to get rid of them now, because if you plan on alking them, then you can just keep them because they're going to convert them into items that are useless but have the same alk value, and you'll be able to alk those on your own anyways. But if you're not the type of player who planned to alk them and you wanted to get rid of them, I would get rid of them before the updates and somebody else could alk them for you. Because if you don't, then you're stuck with a bunch of useless items that you then have to alk. So if you're not someone who wants to do that, I would get rid of those items beforehand. Also, since items are going to be made much slower post-rework, they don't expect, you know, millions of 2Hs alked in the game, etc. This is actually going to drastically affect Invention. And, you know, they will take a look at it and see what needs to be done in terms of that, but they're not at that point in this, you know, part of the rework. They also need to look at insufficient amount of ingredients coming into the game, things like summoning pouches, you know, for like steel bodies for steel titan pouches. So those things need to be looked at carefully also. And they also need to look at replacing items from drop tables with new items that people can disassemble into the same components. Because if they're going to be taking a lot of these smith armors off drop tables, and some of those things are things that people really use for disassembling to get invention components, that's going to be a huge lack of invention components, so they are looking at new items that will disassemble to give those same components to help address that issue. Anyways, yeah guys, that pretty much sums up all the excess information revealed in the mining and smithing rework live stream. So like I said, we can expect a beta within a month or two most likely, so we'll be able to get our hands on all these things I discussed in the previous videos. If you haven't seen any of those previous videos, go check them out. I cover everything you need to know about mining, everything you need to know about smithing, the pickaxes, the ores, etc. So please do check it out if you haven't already. Anyways, that's it for the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you are not subscribed yet and you want to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, then hit that subscribe button. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I am out. Peace.